If a veteran gets into the VA, does he get or she get good quality health care? And by and large, the answer was, if they get into the VA, the health care is good. Not everybody agrees, but kind of that was the sentiment. Problem that we faced is that not everybody was getting into the VA in a timely manner. That's number one. And number two, there were places around the country, Phoenix comes to my mind, where administrators were lying about the nature of waiting periods. Unacceptable. You don't lie. You stand up and say, we don't have the staff to treat people, and you better help us, but you don't lie. And what we did in our VA legislation, healthcare legislation, there were a number of things, but two basic things. Number one, what we said is if the VA is unable to get people into the system in a timely manner, which is what healthcare is about, if you're hurting and you go in, you got to get in. You don't want to wait 4 months. Then they need, obviously, more doctors, more nurses, more medical personnel. We put $5 billion into hiring more VA medical personnel. And the second issue that we dealt with, which is an important issue, especially for rural states like Nevada, is what happens if you live 100 miles away or 200 miles away from a VA facility, okay? Should you have to travel 200 miles to the facility to get a primary care checkup and then 200 miles back? That sounds fairly stupid. So what we said is if you lived more than 40 miles away from a VA facility, you can go to a private physician or a community health center. VA would pay for that. Those were the two main provisions. There were other provisions which we got in there, which I like very much, and that is for spouses or kids of soldiers who died in Iraq and Afghanistan. We made them eligible for the post 9/11 educational program. That was a good thing to do. And we also opened up, I think it was 17 new VA facilities around the country, including a number of community-based outreach clinics. That's what we did. So what we have seen is that VA now has been able to expedite the process. I think the waiting times are down, but I want to hear from you. And we have hired more medical personnel. The other thing that has happened over the last number of years, I know it's hard to believe, but it is true. Before Obama became president, all of your medical records of all veterans were still in paper. Believe that? In paper. Which means that some of you have serious medical issues, you know, your files are this large and very difficult to access the information that is needed. So what has happened through a very painful but ultimately successful process is those records have now gone digital, and they can be achieved and utilized in a much more effective way. So here's what, let me also get to the political nub here and talk about a debate, and I'd love to hear your point of view on this. There is one argument for some of my conservative friends that essentially what they would like to do, not everybody, I don't mean to suggest everybody, some, is ultimately move to the privatization of the VA. Okay, and what they are saying is we don't want government-run health care. We're going to give veterans a voucher, and with that voucher, VA veterans can go out into private hospitals, private doctors, and get the health care that they need. I disagree with that. I think that veterans, by definition, not in every case, but almost by definition, have unique issues because they were veterans. Okay, and I think that a lot of veterans in this country, fully acknowledging that the VA is far from a perfect system, but feel comfortable walking into the VA, where they are often, by the way, served by veterans or family members of veterans. And I'm not here to tell you that the VA is a perfect system. It is far from a perfect system. But I will tell you that in many facilities around the country, remember the VA has 151 medical centers and some 800 community-based outreach clinics. It's a lot of health centers. that by and large, much of the staff sees their function not as a job, but as a mission. They are part of the VA team, and they are trying to work with veterans as brothers and sisters, not simply earning a paycheck. I'm not saying that is 100%, but that is what the goal is. So, my own view is that we have got to strengthen the VA so that it provides the best quality care available. Some ways they are doing some really good things in terms of telehealth. You all know what telehealth is about? What telehealth is about, it's a pretty revolutionary idea, which the VA has kind of been leading the country on, and that is if you're in a rural area and it is a long trip to a psychiatrist or a psychologist, you now have the opportunity to do your counseling via teleconference. They can now actually take a look at problems, physical problems, in your body via teleconference, meaning a veteran does not have to schlep hundreds of miles or spend hours in a car, but can get a diagnosis at home. If you've got diabetes, they are monitoring your condition via telehealth. That's a pretty big deal. The other area where they are making some good progress, I wish, and I tried to expand it, is, again, by definition, a lot of veterans are dealing with pain issues. Pain is a very significant problem, chronic pain. And chronic pain can lead to worse things. It can lead to suicide. It can lead to all kinds of issues. And what they have tried to experiment with is understanding that in our country in general and in the VA, we are overdosing people. We are giving people a lot of medications which sometimes have serious side effects. So the question is, how can we treat pain in ways that don't over-medicate people? And one of the areas that they've been looking at, as has the Department of Defense, is the areas like acupuncture, yoga, medication. I mean, all of which may seem strange, but in fact, for certain veterans have had positive impacts. Nutrition and other types of therapy, non-conventional therapy. And they have been doing a pretty good job on that. So, bottom line is, in my view, we have to strengthen the VA. We have to make sure that all of our VA facilities are well-staffed with well-trained doctors and psychiatrists and nurses and medical personnel. I believe very strongly in primary health care, that when you're sick, there should be a facility near you, and we got to make sure that's the case. We have about 800 CBOCs around the country. I want to make sure that's enough. I want to see us expand medical care to include dental care, which I believe is an important part of health care in general, and a lot of veterans need access to dental care. I want to see us deal more effectively with a very difficult issue, and nobody has a magical solution to PTSD. This is a very difficult issue, but we need the psychiatrists and the psychologists and the peer groups in order to address that and do the cutting-edge work on TBI and other issues that impact the veterans community. So that's health care. In terms of benefits, it is no secret that the VA for many years has lagged behind. People have filed for their benefits, and it has taken them far, far too long to get those benefits. That's no secret, and we have tried, I think with some success, to expedite that. If there is a dispute that has got to be resolved in our lifetimes, not 20 years from now, got to deal with that as well. So a lot of issues out there, but that's kind of some of what I have been dealing with. So let me just conclude by thanking all of you for your service to our country, and the nation owes you all a deep debt of gratitude. Thank you very much. Comments? Yes, sir. Stand up.
I'm Wayne Smith. I'm the Vice Chairman of the Democratic Veterans and Military Families here in Nevada. I'm here today with the Chairman and some of our other members, and I'd like to ask you a question. Actually, I probably got 3 or 4 questions for you, but I'll only give you one and let other people have it. Has to do with chained CPI. I'm sure you're familiar with that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I'd like to know what you're going to do about that and stuff along those lines.
All right. Everybody here know what chained CPI? I bet you most people don't know. Be honest. Raise your hand if you do know what chained CPI is. Okay. This is the way Washington works. What changed CPI is a process by which some people in Congress want to cut Social Security benefits and benefits for disabled veterans. That's what it is. It's a fancy title rather than having the guts to say, oh yes, I support cutting benefits for Social Security recipients and for disabled vets. They say, oh, I support a changed CPI with the full understanding that nobody knows what you're talking about. That's true, okay? What is a changed CPI? Now you're going to laugh. Every time I say this, people laugh. You're going to laugh, but this is the truth. And Wayne, correct me if you think I'm misstating it. Right now, there are some in Congress, mostly Republicans, unfortunately a few Democrats, who believe that the COLAs, the cost of living adjustments, that people on Social Security and disabled vets receive is too generous. That's right. What was the COLA this last year? 0. Well, I guess 0 is too generous. All right, you're laughing. I told you you would laugh. All right. And this is just a kind of a way to cut Social Security benefits without being upfront about what we're doing. Here's the theory very briefly. I don't even go into it. It's so stupid that I don't want to go into it at great length. But the theory is right now, how do we determine what a COLA is? Okay, what if it's 3%, 5%, 0%? What it is supposed to do is measure the rate of inflation. So if you're a senior on Social Security, you're a disabled vet, and you're spending 3% more this year than you spent last year, you're supposed to get a 3% COLA adjustment. You're not supposed to lose ground, okay? Okay. What some geniuses in Washington have determined is that, okay, we look at the basket of things that you buy, and if the price of, this is true, if the price of chicken goes up, we don't say, okay, chicken went up by 10%, that's an increased cost. What we assume is that if the price of chicken goes up, you're going to buy hamburger. And if the price of hamburger is going to go up, you're going to buy dog food. And if the price of dog food goes up, you're going to buy cat food. Therefore, looking at a 10% increase in the cost of chicken is not right. That's not the way we should do it. Bottom line is that as a result of a changed CPI, seniors on Social Security and disabled vets would see over the course of their lifetime very, very significant reductions in their benefits. Now, what did I do? Well, you're looking at the guy who formed a group called the Defending Social Security Caucus. And when a lot of people, Republicans and some Democrats, said, we want to do this, I helped lead the effort, working with, by the way, every veterans organization in this country and every major senior organization in this country, and we beat that back. Now, the good news is I don't hear any Democrats talking about that now. Unfortunately, too many Republicans continue to talk about that. My own view, and I have legislation in to do this, is that when we have seniors in this country trying to live on $12,000, $13,000 a year, when you have disabled vets living on inadequate incomes, we should not be talking about cutting benefits. We should be talking about expanding benefits, and that is what my legislation does.
My name's Avnir Mandler.
Your first name is?
Avnir.
Avnir?
Yes. And I was medically retired after 16 years in '96. And over the years, due to Service Connect disability, my health going downhill, in 2010 I was classified as being 100% disabled and unemployable by the VA. 5.5 years now I've been fighting Social Security disability. And I'm waiting for my second hearing because the federal magistrate in Virginia said that my hearing here was conducted improperly, but instead of just giving me the benefits, I'm still fighting the system. So that kind of goes along with what Wayne was asking with Social Security and disability. Why?
I will tell you why. In the broader sense, the reason why is we have an increasing number of elected officials. And again, I don't mean to be partisan. I really don't. I am who I am, and I happen to be perhaps the most progressive member of the United States Senate here, but I don't, I'm not here to beat up on people. But there is a philosophy out there coming from the Koch brothers and many Republicans who basically believe that government itself is evil. And these are guys who would like to privatize Social Security or cut Social Security, like to partially privatize the VA. They want to do away with the post office, privatize the post office, voucherize Medicare, cut Medicaid. That's just the fact. They believe that corporate America and Wall Street and the big money interests should handle everything. So what has happened over the years is the Social Security Administration has been inadequately funded. So what happens is people come in with a benefit instead of getting treated in a prompt manner or getting their disputes resolved in a prompt manner. It drags on and on and on, and it's getting worse. They're closing down Social Security centers all over America, okay? So I happen to believe that in a democratic, civilized society where we respect veterans, where we respect our seniors, they are entitled to a prompt response to their problems. You may not get everything you want, but at least you have a right to get an objective and fair hearing and get it resolved in a timely manner. Now, while we're on the issue of Social Security and disabled veterans, let me just say one word. You hear a lot on the TV from people who say one of two things. They say Social Security is going broke and it's not going to be there for your kids or grandchildren. Those people are not telling you the truth. Social Security has a $2.7 trillion surplus right now. $2.7 trillion in the Social Security Trust Fund can pay out every benefit owed to every eligible American for the next 19 years. And the second thing they say is Social Security is adding to the deficit. That's not true, because Social Security, as all of you know, you paid into it your whole life through the payroll tax. You and your employers paid into it. It's an independent fund. What's the solution if we want to expand Social Security benefits and benefits for disabled vets, and if we want to extend the life of Social Security beyond 19 years? The answer is pretty simple. And that is, right now, somebody making $5 million a year pays the same amount into Social Security as somebody making $118,000. You lift that cap, you start not at 118, but at 250,000 and above. You will be able to expand Social Security benefits and benefits for disabled vets and extend the life of Social Security until 2065, for 50 years. That's what I think should be done. Okay.
Stephen Horner, U.S. Army, 1973. My question is, I look around the streets nowadays, and the fastest growing homeless population are veterans, either Vietnam veterans because they're losing their families, etc., or the new kids coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan. And I know part of it is the mental health issue that you've already addressed, but what else are you willing to do to go out and help those people, especially the families that are homeless?
No veteran in this country should be homeless, period. And I know that a lot of people beat up on the Obama administration for all kinds of reasons, but the truth is they have invested heavily in this program, and we have reduced the number of veterans who are homeless. I know in my own state, several new facilities have been constructed, and they're working pretty well. And that's true all over the country. But having said that, we have a long, long way to go. And as you have indicated, some of that has to do with drug issues. All right? There are rules about whether is somebody taking drugs while living in a veterans facility, and it's not allowed. And there are, other issues dealing with mental health. So I think all that I can say is our goal has got to be to end homelessness among veterans. And I'll tell you, the Vietnam vets probably have paid a worse price than any group of veterans in American history for a lot of reasons. and so many lives. There's an argument, and I don't know if it's true or not. There is an argument that more Vietnam vets lost their lives after they returned home than they did in Vietnam, through suicide, drug addiction, and a host of other problems. I hope very much, and I think to some degree, we have learned a very important lesson. And that is, as all of you know, this nation was bitterly divided over the war in Vietnam. I opposed the war when I was a young person. But the lesson, and I voted against the war in Iraq, I want you all to know that. But the lesson that I hope this country has learned, and I believe it has learned, is you do not blame the men and women who put their lives on the line and did what they were asked to do for the damn war that they fought in. So if you don't like the war in Iraq, blame the people who got us into Iraq. Don't blame the men and women who did everything they could to defend this country and did their job. Those are not the people you blame. I think that's a lesson that we have learned, and I'm so sorry about how many Vietnam vets paid a price that they should not have had to pay.
Thank you, Senator.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Senator, for coming out here. Steve Sanson, President of Veterans of Politics, and I'm also a 100% disabled veteran. I have two questions for you, Senator. The first question is that you mentioned PTSD and TBI, and mental illness amongst our veterans has been going on since the Revolutionary War. I mean, they had different names for it.
That's right.
Shell shock,
That's right.
battle fatigue, Vietnam syndrome. My first question to you, Senator, is what is Bernie Sanders' administration going to do about 186,000 veterans that are in our nation's prisons and jails today? What is a Bernie Sanders administration going to do to treat our veterans instead of incarcerating our veterans? You want me to answer that?
No, that's good. That's a very good question. Yeah. Continue, Steve, if you want. No, ask the second. That's fine.
Senator, my organization has reached out to your campaign because we have a question that was addressed amongst our membership, and I don't know the answer, so I'm asking. You mentioned about the Vietnam War, that you opposed it. There's a rumor going around, and I'm not accusing, saying that you were a conscientious objector during that time. If so, why?
Okay, I did apply for conscientious objector status, yes, because I would not have fought in that war. Okay, and I was prepared to go to jail or do what I had to do. Okay, that was my view. In terms of your other question, which is an excellent question, Steve, we have 2.2 million people in jail, and I hadn't seen that statistic. 186,000 veterans. Okay. We have more people in jail than any country on earth, including China, which is a communist authoritarian country. What I pledge to you is that by the end of my first term, we will not have more people in jail than any other country. And the reason for that is that, among many other things, we have a broken criminal justice system in which many lives have been destroyed for non-violent crimes. We have many people who should be receiving mental health treatment or substance abuse treatment who were arrested and sent to jail. You got a lot of veterans who came home with a lot of serious problems, PTSD being one of them, and that often could get them into trouble. I know that various states, including my own, have tried to figure out ways to deal with that issue, to make sure that the courts understood perhaps some of the associated circumstances with the behavior of somebody. I know that in my state, I helped fund a program by which veterans themselves were knocking on doors in rural areas trying to ascertain whether there were problems and getting people the help that they needed. Bottom line is that we should treat drug issues and substance abuse and mental health issues as health issues, not as criminal issues. Doesn't do anybody any good locking up people who should, in fact, be given the treatment and the health care that they need. So you've touched on an issue which impacts veterans, but in truth, impacts our entire country. All right, let me give you one example. Some of you will agree with me, some of you will not agree with me. Right now, in America, we have a federal law called the Controlled Substance Act, and that is the legislation which lists various drugs that are considered to be harmful to the American people. On Schedule 1, which is at the top of the list, marijuana sits alongside heroin. I think that that is absurd, all right? And I think it's absurd not just because we all know that heroin kills people, and you can argue about what marijuana does or does not do, but it is nowhere near, in any sense of the word, what heroin does. But here's the problem, and it gets to your question in a sense, Steve. Hundreds of thousands, actually more, over the decades, millions of people have been arrested for possessing marijuana. Disproportionately, by the way, African Americans. And many lives have been ruined because they get a police record. All right, I think that makes no sense, and that is why, as part of criminal justice reform, I've introduced legislation to take marijuana out of the Federal Controlled Substance Act so that it is not a federal crime.
My name is Dave Peter. I'm retired Air Force Signals Intelligence Analyst and the father of an active duty Army registered nurse who is jump qualified and just returned from Iraq in April. My question is, right now we got ground troops in Syria, and I like what you said during the debate on regime change and totally agree with you. How would your administration stop us from expanding wars in the Middle East?
Thank you, Dave. You know, in response to Steve's question, I have to be very honest with you. Again, some of you, not that you'll disagree with me, but I have to be honest. Look, sometimes it is necessary for our country to go to war. That's just the way it is. Certainly World War II, maybe Korea. But I do believe that we have been involved in too many wars that we should not have gotten into. We have been involved in regime change, which has led to consequences that well-intentioned people did not consider. Okay? Was Saddam Hussein, the dictator of Iraq, an evil and disgusting person? The answer is yes. He's a butcher. Should the United States of America literally, unilaterally, have gone in and invaded that country and created the kind of political vacuum which occurred, leading to the growth of Al-Qaeda and the rise of groups like ISIS? The answer is no. The answer is no. And the simple truth is, and I know people disagree, but this is my view, there are terrible people all over this world who are doing terrible things to people. And we have got to work in ways that we can to bring democracy, to bring justice all over the world. But simply getting the United States involved in regime change, doing it unilaterally, getting our troops and our taxpayers involved in never-ending war is, I think, counterproductive to our country and, in fact, to the region itself. So we went into Iraq, we invaded Iraq, we got rid of Saddam Hussein, and the experts told us our troops would come home and democracy would be established in Iraq in a short period. Didn't quite happen like that. And now we are in Syria. So let me tell you what I think. What I think is ISIS is a barbaric organization that must be destroyed. But I think it is not good enough for politicians who want votes to go out there and tell the American people how tough they are, how tough they are. Because it is not going to be their kids who are going to be involved in the war and get their legs blown off or come back with TBI. Not going to be their kids. So the goal is to destroy ISIS. How do we do it in a way that is smart? And in that regard, I would mention to you that in a region of the world that does not have many heroes, in the Gulf region, Middle East, there's a guy who has done a very good job, and this is King Abdullah of Jordan. It's a small country, tiny country, and yet they have taken in all kinds of refugees. People have had to flee the violence and the terrorism of the region. And this is what Abdullah said. What he said is that terrorism is, of course, an international issue, impacts the whole world. But he said it is primarily a Muslim issue because the Muslim nations are fighting for the soul of Islam. The soul of Islam, which he says, and I agree with, is not a demagogic, it is not an intolerant, it is not a violent, it is not a terrorist religion. And what he said, for a dozen different reasons, it is the Muslim nations themselves that are going to have to destroy ISIS. Our job, and the job of the UK, France, Germany, and Russia, and other powerful countries, is to give the kinds of air support and other types of support, training troops, military hardware, that these Muslim countries need. But let me be very frank, and I know there are some people in this room who may disagree with me. I will do my best to make certain that the United States of America, our military personnel, and our taxpayers are not involved in perpetual warfare in the Middle East. Okay, we got one more. Who's that going to be? All right.
Right here, sir. My name is Cesar Lopez. I'm a United States Marine that was deported in 2012. Now, I was deported for drug possession in 2000. I went on vacation to Costa Rica in 2012. Upon my return, I was detained at the airport, and subsequently I was deported 5 months later after being detained in Houston. And I'm a little nervous right now because I've been hiding since I returned. I managed to cross that border by myself. It took me 4 days to get back home. I have no family in Mexico, and that's where I was sent. I was strip searched by military police in Mexico. I was abused in Mexico for 3 weeks that I spent my time there. I was rejected by the citizens over there, and now I'm back home, but now I'm a pariah. I mean, I'm hiding. I want to know, what are you going to do for all the deported veterans, because I'm not the only one. There's a bunch of us that...
How many years, Cesar, did you serve in the military?
I served 2 years, sir.
Okay.
Back in 93, 95, out of high school.
Okay.
I've been here all my life. I got a college degree, and I'm hiding.
All right, Cesar, this is not just a veterans issue. This is an issue for 11 million undocumented people. And I will tell you another story. I'm hearing, I think we're all hearing your story. I talked 2 months ago to a guy who was serving active duty in the United States military, I believe the Army. While he was serving, his wife was deported. That's right. While he was serving in the United States military, his wife was deported. So to answer your question, Cesar, is that I believe in comprehensive immigration reform. I do not believe that you should be hiding. I believe that you have the right to walk the streets of this country without fear. So what we are going to do is a number of things. Number one, we're going to fight for comprehensive immigration reform, which means providing legal status to undocumented people. And number two, moving as quickly as we can toward a path toward citizenship. All right? But we have 11, I've talked to too many people not necessarily people who have served in the military, but too many people who are afraid of being deported. And I think that has got to change. Now, if Congress does not, we passed legislation in 2013, Republicans in the House chose not to take it up, and I'm going to do my best to get them to take it up. But if not, what I will do is use the executive power of the President of the United States to do all that I can. I do not want you or 11 million other people in this country to be living in fear. Thank you all very much.